The clocks have sprung backwards and the weather is warming up. Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we'll discuss week 10 of 2022. Let's get going. Well, week 10 was a bit odd, just like every other week so far. It seems like the weather started off at some point. We had snow. We had like 1.5 inches of snow. It stuck around for about, half a day or so. Today we're getting just a nice spring shower. It's like 65 degrees. Next week it looks like we're not going to have to move the plants inside. It looks like we're going to have 70 degrees in the daytime with the lows in the mid 40s. I'll tell you this though, I haven't moved my tomatoes back out. So at this point, it just feels like it's so far into the year that I don't want to take a chance on losing my tomatoes again. Right now, we're on track to have them ready about a week and a half earlier than we want to put them in the ground. That way we can start doing the whole hardening them off, bring them out, let them get a little sun, that sort of thing. We'll discuss that a little bit more as the time comes as well. Another thing that we've been doing a lot this week that we faced was the avian influenza, or better known as the bird flu. I did do an update on it for anybody who has a flock that likes to let them free range. And I mean, let's be honest, if you have a flock and you have the property, free ranging is the way to go. If you don't, it costs significantly more money, which we've found. We usually go through a bag of food about every 5 to 6 weeks. The chickens, we've put them up and we've gone through half a bag of food in 1 week with them being up. So it is going to cost us a little bit of money, but it'll save us some frustration in the end as far as keeping the birds up. One of the things that we've done to sort of help us with this is I've gone through the coop and I've taken all of the extra chicken wire that we had, and I went through and reinforced our chicken coop to make sure that any outside birds cannot get in. That's the way that your chicken flock will get the avian influenza, is being around any area where wild birds have defecated. They go through and they can catch the virus from there. Those of you who follow the channel also know that we are coming up on a time for us to get our pullets. I believe it'll be 2 weeks from yesterday that we'll be getting our pullets. We still haven't decided on the breed, but what I have done is we raise them in a big water trough with a light outside. So we prefer ours outside. Inside, between the cats and things, it's just too big of a nightmare to worry about. So what I've done is I took the recycled 2x4s that we had and I created a lid that just barely fits over the top of it and kind of snaps into place with wire over the top for us to put the heat lamp on. We can also run the food and water through the top of it. The reason for this is it has to have tension on it because we have raccoons. And raccoons are tricky little devils. If they can get in there and get your chickens, they're going to do it. So if you're trying to avoid the influenza and you've already purchased yourself pullets or anything like that, I highly recommend making sure you put them in a closed off area with heat, food and water like you normally would. Put a lid on them to prevent any critters that could get into them, and make sure that you keep them away from any of the wild birds. We'll keep you updated on how long. As of this point, our goal is to keep them in there until the end of April. So we're hoping that by then the danger is past. Besides the chicken coops, one of the things that we concentrated on this week was getting our tomato garden done. And those who have seen our other vlogs will know this area, this is only going to be, this year we're going to start with the Romas. We've bounced back and forth between the cherry tomatoes and the Romas. I believe we've decided now on just the Romas. So what we did was we went through, put this chicken wire up, and the chicken wire serves two purposes. It'll keep the chicken, once they can free range, it'll keep them from going through here. It will also support our butterfly net. So we got a butterfly net that's going to go, over the top. It's going to block out most of it. We're going to leave a little bit at the bottom for a little bit of air. I don't think that the pollinators we're trying to block off will try to get in through that, but we're not going to be able to show this a whole lot because the whole idea is to keep it covered most of the year And then next year, we're going to do the experiment to make sure that the Roma tomato seeds that come out of here are an exact match for the ones we use this year. So we have a control group that we've set aside. I've got about 6 seeds. And so we want to raise the Romas in here, prevent any of the pollinators from outside getting into them to crossbreed them. And we're going to find out if we can do our own Romas. And if that's the case, then we should be able to get several hundred seeds from just this one bed from the Roma tomatoes that we can use for, and we'll take them and we'll save them, pass them out, that kind of stuff. But first off, we just want to make sure it works. So that's the plan as of right now. In this bed here, we'll put the Roma tomatoes. Just a little bit of kind of the thought process. If it works, what we will do is going forward each year, one year we'll have the Romas, one year we'll have the beefsteaks, the following year we'll do the cherries. So if you save your seeds correctly, the seeds will last anywhere from 4 to 7 years in the right environment. So our idea is to leave it at 3. So that way, every 3rd year, we're getting fresh seeds for that specific tomato. Another thing we've done during week 10 is we have started preparing for a lot of rain. March, April, and May are by far the wettest months of the year for the spring and summer. You know, when you get to November and that sort of stuff, it starts to get rainy again. But you're looking at, 4 to 5 inches or so through the next 3 months. So one of the things you have to prepare for with the raised beds, for example, you want to make sure that they can drain from the bottoms. You don't want them to like overflood, drown out your seeds, and wash all your mulch out. That's something you want to keep an eye on. If you've seen the video, and I'll put a link up here, but if you've seen our video in the past, the way we fill our raised beds is we do, large pieces at the bottom, and then we'll put in mulch or sticks, and then we'll put the compost on top. And that allows the water to soak into your bed, but it doesn't have a hard bottom, and all that means is that it won't get to the bottom and build its way up and overflow your raised beds. The pallet beds that you can see behind me, they're done quite a bit the same. We've never had any issues. You'd have to have a lot of water, I think, to flood out the pallet beds. But the in-ground, the ones that are shorter, the ones that are 18 to 24 inches, those beds, if they're not done correctly, those can flood. And when they do, they can do a lot of damage to the beds around them. Especially if it floats, like if you do them in wood, the bed itself can float and move, and then you've got yourself a mess. You got to go through and redig the bed. Most of the time, you've got to reconstruct it. That can be, not only can it be frustrating, but it can be expensive. And if it happens in the wrong time of the year, it can devastate an entire crop. So one of the things that we like to point out is what's coming up. What are we planning for? Especially if you're doing in-ground beds, like if you actually till, or if you have to go through and fork your beds, if you're doing any of those methods for in-ground gardening, these next 2 months are going to be really important for you. So during March and April, when you have time, when your beds are not too dry and not too wet, you want like the perfect consistency of the dirt. It works best when you turn it. Go through and get those things done. So the reason that's important is for most of us, our beds, there's a lot of work we have to do to actually prep the bed, right? So you've got work to do before you can actually work on the bed. So that right now is a good time to do it, and kind of like today, right? We're getting, just slight sprinkles, nothing you can't work in. The weather's pleasant. Get out if you can, start pulling some weeds, getting the rocks out of the rows, any repairs that you need to do. A big thing is, especially if you use a motorized tiller, make sure your tiller will start. There's nothing more frustrating than getting to the point where it's time to put the beds in. You've got all your ducks in a row. You've put all the work in. You go to start the tiller and it won't start. Believe me, get that out of the way now. The closer we get to spring, if you can't fix them yourself, the shops that do so are going to be backed up. And we all know right now there are logistical issues in getting parts. Do yourself a favor, be proactive, not reactive. As always, I would like to say thank you to those of you who've made it to the end of the video. If you have not, please consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the little bell icon. YouTube will let you know when we upload new videos. It really does help the channel out. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking it. And until next time, I hope you folks take care of yourselves. Peace.